Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I am fine, thank you.
I got the your U 2.0. Thank you for completing that and sending it in. Very interesting. Um, I'd like to start at the top if we can. I just want to kind of unpack this a little bit.
Okay.
So I really appreciate your second sentence here. I would like to have a special meeting with you next year on December 15th in order to celebrate the achievements that we reached in 1 year. That's awesome. Um, However, what you really don't define, what we're looking for here is defining what that looks like. What has to happen for you to want to celebrate the year as it's that has just passed. You know what I mean?
The point in the question, you are asking that how can I compare my past year, and I just told you that I prepared a proposal last year for an accelerator in Silicon Valley for entrepreneurs, and at this moment I want to set a new time for next year in the next December in 2023 in order to remember this conversation and how we will advance in 1 year. That's what the
Yeah,
proposal.
right.
And I just share you that 1 year ago I was writing that proposal. It was very important for me because for example, I have been trying to be in Silicon Valley 20 years ago. I was rejected in order to apply to the tourist visa, and only in 2016 I was there for the first time. In that first time I was in that accelerator, and I meet the CEO of the accelerator, and only in 2021 I was able to visit Silicon Valley again, and I did that proposal when I was there. And so the point is that I will be next year on Silicon Valley again, and I just want to compare the same question but for the next year. I think
Gotcha.
that.
So tell me about the proposal. What all that sort some of this technology, for example, improve the Kardashev scale. What does that mean?
So the proposal that I did is because that accelerator is connected with Google, and they have a mission related with support 1 million entrepreneurs from Latin America. And I prepared that a proposal in order to achieve that goal because
Hang
uh,
on, hang on, hang on. Let me just so I want to make sure that I'm tracking. So what you're saying is the proposal was to secure that award from Google.
yes, I did the proposal for the accelerator because they are focused on Latin entrepreneurs, and they have a partnership with Google. So
And the accelerator is to accelerate entrepreneurial growth in Latin America.
yes, that's the.
Okay.
So the point is that 1 year ago, for this day, I was in Silicon Valley preparing that proposal, and I was in that negotiation. And the only point with that, it was very important for me in a professional perspective and in a personal perspective. So that's the point with the proposal. At this moment, how you can read in the rest of the question, I am talking, for example, about my description on LinkedIn, that I told that I want to create the future to design the future of humanity matching, initiative boosting, projects articulation, organization building, and associated management. So I just talking about my goals, my vision, and that's the point. That's what I'm
Yeah.
looking at this moment. And I just told you, I just shared that the reason that I am a little bit mad is because here in the third world it's very hard to create a lot of things. And for example, in the United States, I have a barrier because I do not have a permit for working, and it's very hard to connect with people who who can help you for an opportunity. In my case, that's like the point that I have been trying to make that kind of opportunity, and it is very hard. That's the.
Yeah. So your current situation in Colombia is such that you pretty much need to get out.
Yes, I need to move from Colombia because I received menaces because my political activism, like you can see, when you are trying to design the future of social management, you need to eliminate the mafia of politics and bankers. And I am preparing a lot of proposals related with that goal. And
You threaten a
last,
lot of people.
sorry,
You threaten a lot of important people,
yes, that's the point. That's
right?
what I'm trying to do. In the United States, I think that it is more easy because people use more reason than violence. You can, for example, have a discussion, and if you think that something makes sense, I think that you can discuss it. But in Colombia, it is very different because you have narco traffic, mafias, and a lot of corruption, and that's the kind of challenges that you don't have to face in a developed country. I know that the United States also have violence and mafias and things like that, but I think that it could be more peaceful in that process, and also
Well,
the people is yes,
actually, more of a concern in the states is the what we no longer tolerate is divergence from the company talk track. In other words, if you don't espouse the same progressive views that established Washington and media now dictates, you're going to have a problem,
okay,
right? What's happening in Colombia in South America, we're in the states, we are rapidly adopting that method of control. So
okay,
brace yourself, because it's we are no longer influencing better behavior in other parts of the world. We're quickly adopting bad behavior from the third world as a method of control and maintenance of power. I mean, it's tragic, but it is the reality where we are today.
yes. I think that, for example, in fact, I have been studying the model of the government or the state of Colombia and United States, and in a theoretical way, I think that probably Colombia is more democratic than United States. For example, we have
Yep,
more political parties.
yep.
We have more organization to defend the human rights or constitutional rights. United States don't have that mechanism. But the point is that, for example, if you are trying to make activism in United States, you can be censored on or something like this, but probably you are not in risk of death. In Colombia, it's very different because you know the people, the energy, the education, things like that. That that, there are a lot of difference, but the point is that, for example, United States also is also trying to be a leader in as much affairs as possible. And when you when you have
I'm sorry, say that again. Try to be a leader in what?
in as much affairs as possible. So the United States also tries to be a leader in technology and science. And when you try to propose something new, probably you can be more supported than in Colombia because people in Colombia also try to copy a different model from the different countries, and there are a lot of corruption in that sense. So the point is that you can start new discussions and things like that. And in the other hand, I think that I can continue my work in Colombia and as Hispanoamerica from United States. In this point, I am trying to request political asylum. I am in this process at this moment. So at this moment, that's my main focus. But I need to protect myself. I need to protect my life. I am at risk at this moment. So that's the point
Yeah,
for
well,
the.
the guaranteed way to get asylum today is pack your bags, get yourself to northern Mexico, and walk across the border.
No, I have tourist visa. I can be in the United States and I can request political asylum with my tourist visa. I already I know how it works. The point is that I am not I am not assume that risk to cross the border like a illegal immigrant. I'm trying to avoid it. I also was trying to apply for a visa by national interest because, for
Mm-hmm.
example, I have been doing different proposals and I have been trying to make both things at time. But the first thing that I received was menaces. I was aware that it was my risk, but at this moment I am focusing that part. For the reason I really appreciate the process with you because you are listening me. That kind of coach is very important because it is very different to receive coaching in Spanish rather than receive coaching in English. You know that you need to improve your grammar, your communicational skills in order to be as precise as possible and as accurate as possible and as clear as possible. So the point is that I'm trying to connect first in the United States environment, and that's my main goal for the next year. And I hope to reach something. For example, I have various ideas to improve social networks, and I have some people from social network, for WhatsApp, from Twitter, from LinkedIn, and I have been sending them some proposals, some videos that I am recording, and they don't reply me. So I am planning to be in Silicon Valley to make a riot in the doors of the social networks with I don't know
Make a scene in the lobby.
I will, for example, I have been trying to reach Mark Zuckerberg 3 times in my life. First time was when he was in Colombia. He was in the university where I studied in Bogota, but I was in the headquarters of another city in Cali. But in the headquarters of Bogota, the capital of Colombia, they have 3 rings of security. I reached 2 rings, talking with the security, but I can reach the last.
Couldn't quite leap over the last ring.
Yeah, I got noticed about it, and I get a bus in the last night, and I was in the next year in the next day in Bogota. So it was
I, tell you,
failed.
I want to make some comment before we get too far away from it. I really appreciate your comment about the spirit in which that I approach this, and I will insist that I understand you.
Mhm.
And Spanish isn't my second language. It isn't my third. It isn't my fourth. I have one language. So there'll be times I'll ask you to slow down or repeat something because I didn't understand it, and it's only because I care to understand, right? So if you get nothing else out of this, um, you're going to get better at communicating with Americans. How's that?
Yeah, that's very important. For example, I did an exercise that I trying to study uh, primary school and secondary school in English again in order to program
What
my
school? What school?
some courses of primary school or secondary, and I trying to study it in English in order to learn the language and in order to program myself to start to think in English. And
Yep.
for example, I did last year I did a CV, uh, a CV with 67 pages explaining a lot of things. And I was explaining that I was trying, for example, in Colombia to concentrate in English. I have been preparing 2 patent drafts in my life. Second patent draft was in English, and I have been trying to think in English. And it's very difficult because you need to shift when you are in the United States environment. You start to focus again, and sometimes it is hard, but I have been improving it. Last day I have been talking a lot of Spanish with a lot of music with people, and I have been lost my communicational skills, and sometimes you perceive that I need to stop, or I need to remember words, and I need to how to communicate something. But that's the point. That's very important to be competitive in the United States. And for example, since 2016, that it was my first crash in my life, the most hard crash in my life was when I was in Silicon Valley, because I have a lot of illusion and ideas about this place. And when I was there, I got noticed that I was not competitive. And since this year, I have been studied a lot of in order to try to be competitive. And only last year, I perceived that I was ready, and I was there. And for example, I can reach any permit for working, and it was my first barrier. So for at this moment, then I was trying to consider political asylum or visa by national interest, and I have been working. During the last year in that process. For example, I was traveling last year on December 8th uh, from Colombia to the United States. And so 1 year ago, I was in Silicon Valley. Now I'm in Colombia, but I am preparing to travel in January.
So I just wanted to comment about your comment about you have all these illusions and these pictures of what a, you're coming to the golden arches, right? I mean, the land of crystal lights and every sunshine and rainbows and all that, and you get here and you realize, well, hell, these people are people too, you know, with all the the goodness and the badness and everything that goes in between, right? And, it's tough. You realize that pearly gates don't open up, right? And you get busted in the jaw, right? Somebody kicks you in the teeth. It's tough to take, right? Part of that dream, that illusion gets wrecked, but it makes you more resilient, right? And it makes you go back and maybe tune your strategy a little bit more, understanding better who your target audience is and how you need to talk to them, right?
Yes, I perceive myself as resilient. That has you told it. And one point, for example, at this moment, I did a proposal. I read the proposal for United States Immigration and Citizenship Services because I think that United States can solve the problem in a different way. For example, if you want to become resident, you can prepare virtually, and then, for example, United States can give you a temporal permit to be in the United States. So, for example, the current illegal immigrants, if they start to compete with the rest of people of the world that are doing that kind of jobs, they can left, and probably you can be competing with more people because some people could be in the United States, could be very skilled in the areas, but some people don't take the risk to be an illegal immigrant. For example, I had this challenge because I was trying to be in United States first as a tourist, and it was very difficult. And if you see the current options, it is very difficult because, for example, as I told you, just give me an opportunity and let's work remotely. And we start to work, and I try to make something, and then you can, okay, I will give you 3 months of testing, and we will work together. And if, for example, you can stay in the United States only if you are competitive. I am talking only for the people who is not who don't born in the United States, for example. But I perceive that we can change the current scheme because I have been reading that there are 15 millions of illegal immigrants in the United States. That I think that there are a lot of people, like 5% of the population approximately.
Yeah, hold it. So there's a lot more than that. That number's media contrived, or a Democratic Party made up number that the media just repeats because it hides the real number, which is probably closer to 30. And since Biden's been in office, we've got an additional five, and they're flooding in, and they're all unskilled. I don't blame them. I think I admire their courage, but this is no way to run a country, right? And the reason for just so you understand my perspective on what's really going on here is there's no way to understand opening the borders to anybody and everybody unless you look at it from the context of the retention of power. And that's what this really is about. They're bringing all these people in that they believe will become over time. First of all, they're going to do everything they can to legalize them so that they can vote, and in the belief that they will vote for the party that allowed them entry, right? So this is really about just the perpetuation of power. Rather, there isn't any aspect of this that is human rights related. That's like, get that fantasy out of your head. So as it relates to what you're trying to propose, I suspect there's lots of ways to solve the problem if there was any interest in solving the problem. There's no interest in solving the problem because the only thing that these people represent is our votes, right? Now, if you take the H1 or H2 or whatever it is, visas for people that have technical skills that are brought in and sponsored by businesses, it's a little bit different, right? But it's so tightly controlled. You look at that, that's the difference between how that's controlled, right? And how visas are limited and all of that versus what they're doing on the border with anybody that with the gumption to find their way there. How do you explain that? You can't, unless you look at it from the perspective of just like in South America, just like any tin horn dictator throughout history, the only thing that's important is the maintenance of power, right? And now that we've got got pretty much thoroughly corrupted national intelligence and national police through the FBI are in on the fix. Um, we are living in a totalitarian state. We just don't know it yet.
That's very important. But for example, the point is that Colombia is trying to negotiate with the United States to eliminate the tourist visa for all Colombians. They
Right.
reached that goal with United Kingdom, but I have been proposing that it could not make sense because if you understand the Colombian culture, you can travel with criminals and a lot of people who is not able to be in the United States, and that's not a good idea in the case of the United States. And let's in
No,
United
it's not.
but they are trying to negotiate it, and I am trying to say, okay, let's negotiate another thing. For example, if you try to get a tourist visa, yeah, in my case my family was rejected 3 times. Only in the fourth time I was able to get the tourist visa because I was planning a travel with my with one of the universities where I studied, and I sent they give me a letter and I present the letter that I was planning a academic trip for Silicon Valley. That was the reason that I received the visa. But the point is that, for example, some people trying to apply for the visa and they never understand why they are rejected. That's it happening in my case. And if, for example, you organize the reason, you can try to apply it next time. Or in the case that if the issue
So there's
really
no hang on. So there's no closing the communication loop. You're just denied. You don't have any idea why you're denied. So
yes.
you have no one to go to appeal or to improve the application so that you can be accepted. Right? You don't get any feedback.
No, you don't
Correct?
get any feedback. That's the problem. But the point that you can probably reject it because you can get the tourist visa and you then try to be in United States as an illegal immigrant and you start to working. That's one of the uh, uh, probably challenges. The point is that if you try to get another way for a working period, if for example you say, okay, I am a chef, for example, and I want to be in I have been talking with a restaurant and they want to make me a testing period of 1 month. I want to work only 1 month with that restaurant, and if it doesn't work, I need to come back, for example, and you only have permit for 1 work for 1 month for that particular challenge. The point is that at this moment there are a lot of people, for example, working in restaurants and manual jobs, and the current business has that people, but that people probably is not the most skilled people in that area, are probably the people with more risk adversity because they assume the risk to be as illegal immigrant, and you are losing a lot of people, and United States are losing a lot of people with a lot of skills that could be tested in order to apply. And I think that it
Yeah.
makes sense, and what I'm trying to propose is that we need to create a United States has the country, has the aspirational country in order to has I forget the name of the Donald Trump, make America great again. The point that America is
Yeah.
great because it is the land, is the country of opportunities. But I think that you need to try to migrate the most competitive people in the planet, and it will be a great country because you have, for example, 15 millions of people has immigrants, and probably you don't have the most competitive migrant because if you start to compete with more people, they can find jobs and they probably must return. Or United States can say, okay, you don't have job, or you are not competitive, you need to return to your country. And I think that it makes sense because that's the North American vision that you need to compete. This is like the
Yep.
capitalism, and it makes sense. I don't know, what do you
Yeah.
think?
Well, so the problem is we're developing a political culture now that says it's racist to expect people to compete.
Yes.
Now, tell me how that makes any sense at all. None. So that's there's so many challenges here, and I admire what you're trying to get accomplished. I think it's admirable. I hope that you find success with it. I really do. Um, I'm up against. I've got another call here in a few minutes, but I want to continue this dialogue. And I have another assessment I want to send to you. It's called the DISC. It's self-explanatory. It's it's really about your dominant communication styles, and I think you'll find it really enlightening. I think it'll be helpful to you to understand exactly how it is that you communicate, because it also is about how people perceive you, right, from your perspective, right?
Mhm.
It'll help us communicate better, right? So let me send that to you. And it's it's like this is Thursday. Why don't we schedule another call for early next week?
Yes, great. I am
Do you have
able.
your calendar?
Yes.
Do you have your calendar in front of you?
At any day, no problem. I am able most of days.
Okay, give me a second here. Let's say Tuesday, Monday and Tuesday are I'm locked up. How about Wednesday at 10 a.m.?
Yes, that's great. It will be fine.
Okay, I'll send you an invite for that, and I'll also send you a link for this disc assessment that I mentioned. You'll have both of those shortly, and then complete the same drill, complete the disc. I'll get notified so I get a chance to review it before we get on the phone again. Okay,
Okay, great.
and pay attention to the emails. Don't answer the door when somebody's knocking without knowing who it is first. Okay,
Okay, fine.
it could be the bad guys.
Same for you. Thanks, James. Have a good day.
Exactly.
Bye.
Bye, Andres.
Bye.